What's going on, everybody? Tom Westerholm here from MassLive.com, Celtics beat writer. I am joined in the car by MassLive's columnist, Matt Votor. We are going to talk a little bit about Celtics Pelicans, which is coming up tonight. If you're watching this tomorrow, we aren't going to have any breaking news about the game or anything like that, but we wanted to talk a little bit about Anthony Davis. And we want to sort of break down the thing that everybody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about online because you get yelled at a lot by Pelicans fans. I've experienced this a lot. Let's talk about Anthony Davis, right? So the biggest thing, I mean, Anthony Davis at this point is one of the most fascinating, contract situations in the league. He's just, nothing is probably going to happen with him this year. This summer is a lot more likely. His contract situation is fascinating. Matt, let's just for starters, what are you looking forward to about seeing him tonight? What have you seen maybe in watching him against the Celtics? They played about a week ago. Just kind of your initial Anthony Davis thoughts here before we get going.
Well, certainly, I think in any scenario with him, he's a unique big man in the league in a league that there's not a lot of elite big men. He certainly is. He's terrific. He can do a lot of things, and he's young. And so rarely does a guy like that do you even think about him changing teams.
Yeah.
And that's obviously been talked about so much. So it feels like for a couple of years before the Celtics got Gordon Hayward, there was conversations about Gordon Hayward ending up on the Celtics. And the fact that he did end up on the Celtics after all of that conversation for all of that time feels like it almost emboldens people to believe the Anthony Davis possibility is that much more.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And I mean, it's worth, and also it's just kind of all the signs point to the Celtics having a shot at him. And
sure.
Before we get going here, we should say that none of this is sourced. None of this is anything. It's just like, we're just talking about Anthony Davis. We're talking about the Celtics. This is not sources have told us that anything.
That's very true.
Probably a necessary disclaimer here. All right. So one of the interesting things that I think is, let's go over his contract completely before we get into it totally. He is eligible to sign a massive extension this summer with the Pelicans. And it's basically that contract extension is one of the biggest reasons why people believe that he might stay in New Orleans, because he can get an extra year,
right.
He can get a little extra money. I mean, and this would make him the highest paid player in the NBA.
It's only a little extra money by NBA standards. It's a massive amount of extra money by anybody else's standards.
Well, certainly, and that extra year of guarantee is not nothing, because I mean, Davis has had injury issues in the past. So, getting that one extra year of guaranteed money, not an impossibility by any means. So if he turns the Pelicans down this summer, there's a reasonable chance that he is going somewhere, that he's thinking he's going to go somewhere else, because that contract extension is one of the biggest reasons why he would stay. So that's kind of the thought process there. Then you kind of can look around the league. He has 1 year left on that deal. Let's just answer questions as they come in, because if the Celtics win the championship this season, is it possible that affects Danny's decision to go after AD? I would, and again, this is just speculation here, I would say probably not. I mean, you only get a chance every once in a while to go after somebody like AD. He's too skilled.
It wouldn't affect his decision to get him, but it might affect his decision on who he's willing to give up to get him. Because people end up getting attached to guys that they associate with winning a championship. Recently, Nathan Eovaldi is doing a press conference for a big deal that he just signed with the Red Sox for a guy that is not making nearly that kind of money if he didn't pitch the way he did in the World Series. So if you want to translate that to the Celtics, if Jaylen Brown, let's say, has a massive, has a massive output in an NBA series and does in the NBA championship, let's say against Golden State, does a good job shutting Klay Thompson down or something, you might then find a certain amount of fans that are in love with Jaylen Brown, and that changes a little bit. I don't think Danny Ainge is necessarily affected that way.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing.
And I think Danny Ainge is a very warm guy personally, but when he's in there with chess pieces, he's likely to hold it together. I think it would affect the reaction to a deal a little bit if you lost somebody that people cared that much about. And if you remember too, people were really torn for a while about whether or not you could give up Al Jefferson to get Kevin Garnett, and you look at how that turned out. So there's going to be a certain faction of fans that have grown attached to certain guys, but I think when Anthony Davis is in play, you got to go try to go get him.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll get back to that a little bit here. Let's finish up with the contract stuff really quick first. The Celtics can't trade for Anthony Davis this year. That's been pretty well established. You can't trade for two guys who are on designated player, basically the Rose Rule contracts. They already traded for Kyrie. Kyrie is on that. So when Kyrie opts out of his deal this summer, which he's going to do, and when he re-signs it with the Celtics, which he says he's going to do, then the Celtics can trade for Anthony Davis, not before then. And presumably, if Kyrie is committed to sticking around in Boston, he'll want to get that done as quickly as possible because he knows, Kyrie's a smart guy, he knows that this is on the horizon. This is something that the Celtics might want to do. So the Celtics can't trade for him this year. Now, the other thing to remember is that the Pelicans probably won't want to trade Davis this season. One, because they want to try to keep him, obviously.
Right.
And then two, because they want the Celtics to be in the negotiations if they are going to trade him. Because they want, even if they aren't going to trade him to the Celtics, they want to be able to say, the Celtics are on the table with Jason Tatum. Los Angeles, what are you going to give up?
The Celtics will, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
The Celtics will absolutely drive up the price
right.
for whoever gets him. And somebody else, with the Lakers, the Knicks, the Clippers, whoever, are going to have to raise what they're offering, no question.
Right. So, and Pelicans are aware of that. They're not gonna do anything there. So, really unlikely he gets dealt this season. This off season is going to be when that happens, if it happens, or he might decide to stay. So, I think the interesting thing to talk about then is the potential package. For me, if I'm looking at this team, I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can take anybody off the table. I mean, with the exception of Kyrie, who you want to play next to Davis. Maybe with the exception of maybe you could say like a Gordon Hayward or an Al Horford it would be a bad look if you traded those guys because they came in via free agency.
Right.
I would see that case.
Gordon Hayward especially kind of fits that because you courted him. He chose you over a lot of other people. In that it's recent. It would send an interesting message if you traded Gordon Hayward to in a deal that quickly.
Yeah.
After Horford's coming toward the end of his deal, which is kind of a different animal.
Sure, definitely. And I would say too that with those guys, you also might not get anything back. I mean, those guys might not add that much to the package because if New Orleans trades Davis, they're going all in on a rebuild, and that's why the Celtics have all these assets that would be so attractive to New Orleans. So the one that I'm basically talking about, the one that I think we're both basically talking about, the guy that we're talking about is Jason Tatum. I mean, he's the most interesting guy as far as what would the Celtics be willing to give up. He's already kind of a star. He's incredible there. He's really brought his percentages back up this season. He's having a really great sophomore campaign. A lot of people have said, what if this guy gets to be like a top 10 player in the NBA? Do you give up him for Anthony Davis? To me, the answer is unequivocally yes. And for me, that's because Davis is right now second best, third best, maybe first best. I mean, he's one of the three best players in the NBA, and you give up for that guy when you don't have anything like that on your team currently.
And positionally, the difference between Davis and your other options there is much larger than the difference between Tatum and your other options to play his position. It's much harder to find a big like that.
Yeah, certainly. So I would agree with that, and so that then you start to get into some tougher questions about how you make the money work, because the Celtics will have to match.
Right.
We had a question in here that was asking if the Celtics will re-sign Terry Rozier. It's an interesting question. He might be a guy that you look at, signing to like a bigger deal, maybe including him in a trade. It's going to get complicated this summer, though, because they are going to have to find the contract somewhere. You might look at Marcus Smart. The only problem is that the Celtics are so much better whenever Smart is on the floor, and for the Celtics, he's a clear plus. I'm not sure that he's a plus in many trades, though, just because he is on
he's more valuable to the Celtics in a lot of ways than he would be to another team, especially a rebuilding team. He's a great piece to have on a contender. His personality and sort of the way he plays is important in this collection of personalities. Not necessarily the same thing on another team.
Yeah, for sure. So, when you look at sort of like building that out, I think that there's a couple of ways you could do it. Obviously, the Celtics have a ton of picks, so that's something to keep in mind. They could throw all of those picks on the table, and what you can maybe try to do as well, maybe you say to Jaylen Brown, maybe you say to the Pelicans, we'll give you Jaylen Brown and like all of our future picks. Maybe that's something that you do, or maybe you say we won't give you all those future picks, but we will give you Tatum. You can play around with those potential packages, and that might make a difference as well. I'm honestly.
What would you prefer if you're the Celtics? Would you rather? It feels to me like you'd rather trade Brown and really some hard to get rid of picks otherwise, because you know what Tatum is and have a feel for what he can be, rather than Tatum and keep the picks in hopes that one of those picks approaches what Tatum is.
I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. I also think that you might want to. So that's one way to look at it for sure. I think the alternative.
Tom is trying to tell me I'm wrong nicely.
No. I'm just the devil's advocate, because I don't know what the answer is. The devil's advocate would be, but if you trade them Tatum and you keep the picks and you keep Jaylen Brown, you keep more future flexibility, which is important because the Celtics, they had this opportunity to build this great team, to build this like team for the next 15, 20 years, 10 years or whatever it might be. If you trade for Davis, you're building a contender right now. You have a chance to win championships right now. And it's a lengthy window, but you do shorten that time frame just a tiny bit, so and you never know.
Big guys don't generally stay effective as long either. And
and neither do point guards who rely on like quick twitch explosion. And Kyrie isn't like the most explosive guy, but his quickness, his like that little bit of burst that he has is a big part of his game.
No question.
You're really gambling on Kyrie and AD staying relatively healthy going forward, which is not a bad gamble. And also, if you trade all those picks, you still have Tatum to build around afterwards. So I get it from that angle as well. But Jaylen and the picks does give you sort of that extra cushion to me if you did trade Tatum and you kept those assets close to home. So let's take a look here and see if I know we got some comments. See if I can figure out how to look at these comments while we're live.
I'm looking forward to tonight to just see how many people, just see the reaction of who does Anthony Davis give the half hug to? Does he spend a couple seconds talking to Tatum or Kyrie or anything like that? Because it's going to be massively overanalyzed.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I was guilty of fishing for some retweets on one of those in their first meeting. We got Jordan says you can do a 3-team trade that sends Jaylen Brown and Kevin Love to New Orleans, and then send the Sacramento pick to Cleveland to get Davis in Boston. I mean, the thing about 3-team deals to always remember is that whatever and that's like, there's ways. It's not a bad idea, trying to put together 3-team deals. That's plausible.
Right.
The thing to remember about them is that whatever one you propose is not going to happen, and that's not like, and that's not against like your proposal. That's nothing about that. It's just that when 3-team deals are proposed, they always fall apart. They are so hard to nail down. One team gets cold feet, that kind of thing.
Combination of the egos and needs of the people in the room or people on those calls. That's a hard thing to come together.
3-team deals are really, really hard to nail down. I think one thing to sort of keep an eye on too, going back to our conversation about the picks, the Celtics picks are actually sort of losing some value. The Kings, weirdly good this year. The Clippers, that pick is going to convey, which it wasn't like guaranteed. That thing was lottery protected. It's going to convey. Also, the Clippers are one of the best teams in the Western Conference right now, and also so are the Memphis Grizzlies, who are the Celtics' other picks. So the Celtics are probably going to have 4, picks this season, and it's plausible that none of them are in the lottery.
Right.
So, you kind of take that for what it's worth. Going under a tunnel here. you kind of take that for what it's worth. I don't know. Maybe those picks don't end up being that valuable, and maybe then you have to throw in extra value.
Pushes you toward the Tatum possibility.
It does,
as far as what New Orleans would ask for.
It does. All right. So, anything else that you sort of want to cover here? I mean, I know there's there's a million angles, with Anthony Davis. I mean, he's a fascinating player. I guess what would you like about seeing him? Let's say the Celtics. Let's not include Tatum and Jalen and even probably Terry Rozier. What would you like to see about Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, playing together and playing off each other?
Well, certainly, certainly both of those guys can create things for the other in terms of spacing, in terms of Kyrie getting Davis shots and things. I'd be curious to see how and you'd probably know this a little bit more better than I do already, but I'd be curious to see how they interact with one another. What's their relationship already, and how much does because as you saw as you and I'm saying everybody saw at the beginning of this season, it took a little bit, and maybe is still taking a little bit for this group to come together. And so you add a dimension like Anthony Davis. I'm assuming the end product is something terrific, but I'd be curious to see the whole thing, see how it evolves if he does end up here.
Definitely, and I think one thing to remember with this year's team obviously is that part of the reason it took so long to gel is because guys were not at all healthy yet. I mean, we know Gordon Hayward. I mean, he's still trying to get that last little bit of bounce back. But yes, no, 100%. It would take a little bit and it would be yet another adjustment period for a lot of these guys, including Brad Stevens, who would be integrating for the first time an explosive star big man. I mean, he integrated Al Horford into his system, but Al Horford was the perfect Brad Stevens big man who also happened to be an all-star. Anthony Davis is a completely different, person. He's a completely different type of player. But I think it would work really well. I think that Kyrie and AD would be really fascinating because, Kyrie has made it pretty clear that playing with stars was not his problem in Cleveland. His problem was playing with LeBron. And LeBron can be for all of his many good qualities, he can be a difficult star for some people to play with, which makes sense.
Going through a tunnel, by the way, if we cut out that.
Yeah, if we lose you, that's what's going on. But I think that AD would be actually a really good mix with him, just because Kyrie would still get to be, the primary ball handler. He would still get to run the show. He would still be, I think, probably the go-to scorer down the stretch because he's still the best, either the best or the second best ISO guy in the NBA. I think that pairing would be really good, and it would still give Kyrie sort of the chance to be the guy, even if he's not the best player on his team. Anthony Davis, if he got traded to the Celtics, he would be the best player on the team. So, yeah, I think their relationship seems like it's pretty decent. That they got together. I think they first met each other. Team USA seems like that was kind of where they initially met, and they seem to be relatively friendly.
Kyrie not playing tonight.
We got a quick question from Jordan here before it goes away.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many All-Stars do you guys think the Celtics can get? Kyle Lowry has been awful, so I don't think he makes it. Do you guys think we can get Kyrie and Tatum? Maybe even Marcus Morris. I respect the Marcus Morris respect. Don't think he's going to make the All-Star team. Just there's going to be a lot of, especially this year, when they're doing the drafting again. So it's not split up by conferences. He's been phenomenal. But I would say that my best guess would be the Celtics get one or two.
And I would say, given some of the health on that, I'd like to see those guys get some days off.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that even when I was younger and as a fan, I never want my guys doing a whole lot of all-star stuff. I love the idea of getting off their knees for a little bit, and I think that's helpful for a lot of guys. I think it'll be helpful for Marcus Morris.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kyrie and Tatum are probably reasonable guesses.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I don't think that's unreasonable. We got a plot twist here. What if we let Kyrie walk, re-sign Rozier, sign Kawhi, and then trade for Anthony Davis? Be pretty tough to do. I think Kawhi is, he seems like from what we can tell from the outside, seems like he's doing really well in Toronto. And if he doesn't stick with Toronto, sounds like he's pretty focused on, you know, maybe like a Western Conference team, maybe like an LA. But who knows? I don't think. I will say, the Celtics love, obviously, Kyrie Irving. I think that you know, Danny Ainge and the Celtics front office has as high an opinion of Kyrie Irving as just about anybody in the league. He keeps proving them right too. He keeps.
I think so.
He keeps just being better and better and better. I mean, this season has been, you know, Matt and I were talking about this a little bit on the way in. I think he's been underrated this season. I think he's actually putting together such an impressive campaign. I think if he's willing to sign that, you know, 5-year max that the Celtics are going to put on the table for him, I don't think there's going to be any hesitation on either side.
I think Rozier's a good player, but I think because of the run the Celtics went on last year in the postseason, I think that may have increased the respect people are giving Rozier, maybe to a somewhat unrealistic level. It's not close in terms of ability, in terms of what he has to offer between Kyrie and Rozier. And that's not a slight on Rozier, it's a point of just how good Kyrie is, and which is why the Celtics hold him in the regard that they do.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody, his comment went away right away, says everybody's going to remember how good Kyrie is come the playoffs. Yep. All right, so let's talk lastly about what it looks like if Anthony Davis, because we talked about what it looks like if he ends up in Boston, what it looks like maybe if he doesn't end up in Boston, just to sort of have all the bases covered.
It's worth also noting Tom's going to be telling me what lanes to be in a moment here.
Well, you're in the right one. All right, so basically the way that I look at it here a little bit, the Pelicans have a star point guard. You know, if you look at Drew Holiday, he's having a phenomenal season.
Right.
He is 21 points, you know, about 9 assists per game. Just playing out of his mind. So basically, if the Pelicans wanted to build a winning team, they already have those two guys in place. They just need wings, and they are so capped out for the foreseeable future.
Right.
That's going to be really tough to build. I think if Anthony Davis decides to stay, it's not so much it's not so much like a move of like, you know, of loyalty or anything like that, or like, let's build something here. To me, it is very clearly, you know, I'm trying to build I'm trying to get a ton of money. And I would respect that completely. You know, like, you should try to get all that money. Go through here. But I don't think the Pelicans are going to be able to build a contending team around him. Like, it's just, and that's just kind of almost poor luck in a lot of ways. Yeah. But you know, it would be really, really difficult to just cap wise to flip everything around. You know, find guys who are affordable, find guys who fit.
They're a long way from having an open championship window, and
yes.
he has to realize that. So the question is, what is his, you know, where does winning a championship, where does legacy fit in his mind? And that's something that's for a lot of guys. You can make an awful lot of money as an NBA player, even if you're not at a supermax. And I think he might be in the situation. He could look at it and say, I can still be very rich and try to add something to my legacy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I mean, there's something to be said for being the guy in a city for your career. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing. The Celtics had that with Paul Pierce. The Mavericks had that with Dirk Nowitzki. And obviously, those guys won championships. And obviously, Paul Pierce, you know, did end up moving on for like the last couple of years of his career. There is something to be said for being that guy and for being just the king of the city. Like, that's pretty cool.
Sure.
You know, you have
especially in a city that has fewer sports teams too. His star power in New Orleans, outside of Drew Brees, there's nobody higher than that.
Yeah. And then, so the other possibility that people, you know, discuss with Anthony Davis is LA, because, you know, he signed with LeBron's agency. He is, you know, he would make a lot of sense next to LeBron in terms of just like skill sets. So stay in this lane, but kind of keep to the left. You know, that's on the table. The thing about LA to me is that if AD does turn down, you know, the Pelicans, left here.
Right here?
Yes. But stay in this right lane.
I see what you're saying.
Directions with Matt and Tom. So the thing about
straight.
Yeah. The thing about LA is that the Celtics can probably beat whatever offer they put on the table. Brandon Ingram, all these guys are really, really talented. I just think that, like, you would rather have Jason Tatum. You would rather have even like Jaylen Brown and picks. So to me, if it gets to a point where Anthony Davis is going to be traded, he's probably going to be traded. You know, like the Celtics can probably match. Maybe the Pelicans don't want to trade him to the Celtics. Maybe the Celtics have been vulturing around him for a long time. I don't know. But to me, that does seem like one potential impediment.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's the although that said, you think if you're the Pelicans, you probably would almost rather have him go east.
Yeah, and you know, you might want to have the guy that people are talking about as a potential top 10 player.
That wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that covers a lot of things. I know there were some comments we didn't get to. We got a random Q. How impressed have you been with Paul Pierce's performance in the media since retirement? I think it's great we get to see him on our screens for many years to come. I
want to see him right in media. He's good on TV. Let's see him right.
Yeah.
I think he's done a. I think his evolution has been pretty good, and you can certainly see his comfort level evolving as well.
Yeah, definitely. He's been fun. All right, guys. He's Matt Votor. I'm Tom_NBA on Twitter. And how often do we braid our hair? Or braid my wife's hair? Who knows? All right. We appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you guys hanging out. MassLive.com/Celtics. We're going to have all your coverage from Celtics Pelicans tonight, as possibly Anthony Davis, definitely not Kyrie Irving, square off. And we will talk to you guys later. Thanks very much.
Thanks.